What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway for Sunday, September 10th, around 3 p.m. Eastern. And yes, I know football has started, so I do appreciate the people here still watching these NASCAR videos. I do appreciate it. You guys are the true diehards. But the racing should be pretty good this weekend. Kansas, I know intermediates aren't like the most exciting thing in the world, but the racing at these tracks in the next-gen car have been very good. And we saw it earlier in the spring at Kansas this season where Kyle Larson and Hamlin at the end just battling out, and overall, fantastic race, one of the best of the year. So I'm hoping we can see that happen once again. But anyway, this happens to be your first time here, which I highly doubt since NFL season has started. But my name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR and NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. And you cannot find me live anymore on Sundays because I don't do it once NFL starts. So I do appreciate everyone that did join the live streams throughout the entire season. I can't wait to be back in February doing them once again. But if you do enjoy today's free content, the only thing I ask in return, if you can leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'd be more than happy to answer you. And don't forget about these sponsors of the show because they do make these videos possible. Prize Picks, Underdog, promo code CPEN on either site will get you a deposit match bonus up to $100. And over on Prize Picks, they're still running their Dak Prescott Week 1 promo of only 0.5 passing yards. Take the over on that. Pair it with your favorite prop, and you're well on your way to giving yourself an edge to win some extra money this weekend. All right, so getting into the strategy portion here, it's not going to be anything too crazy. It's just your typical intermediate track, cookie cutter for the most part. Kansas, 1.5 mile track, 267 laps. So you're kind of looking at 2 DOMs per lineup, but you can always make that more or less depending on qualifying order, hybrid dominators, and things like that. So it's not like an absolute given that you have to have 2 DOMs per lineup, but I would say on average, that's what it's going to look like. And if you're looking for similar tracks, just looking at the pretty much the lower wear intermediates, but I mean, you can't throw out Auto Club. You can look at Michigan as well, even though it's 2 miles in length. So really just look at your high-speed intermediates, and you're pretty much going to gather who's going to be the fastest cars because it's the same guys almost every single time, although Kansas is a track that's pretty dominated by the Toyotas, so they can all get a bit of a bump as well. And finally, moving on to the driver by driver breakdown portion here, I do have to mention one thing first, and that is, of course, Patreon offering their free trials, so you get access to all the extra NASCAR content that I have over there, projections, optimizer, ownership projections, sim scores, betting model, and much, much more. And I also cover the NFL in a very similar fashion, so if you want to come and check that out as well for week 1, I'd be more than happy to have you over there. It's always a good time in NFL chat and things like that. But anyway, let's move on to the drivers, and we'll start up top with the man, Denny Hamlin, 11,000 on DraftKings, 14K over on FanDuel. He's starting in 14th, opened up as the odds-on favorite to win this race right there with Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Larson, and had to pour one out for him last week because he killed a lot of lineups. Now, he still did well on DraftKings because of all the dominator points, but he was well on his way to a 100-some point day. He was absolutely crushing, was overweight, and had him on FanDuel as well. And you don't get all the dominator points over on FanDuel, so it hurt a lot worse when he went to the back. So that was unfortunate, but I'm assuming he'll hopefully bounce back and not have that happen once again, because I think that was the first ever loose wheel for Denny Hamlin ever in the next-gen car, which is actually kind of crazy to think about because that's about 50-some starts right there. But if we're looking at practice, he looked pretty good in the long run, top 5 car overall. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the top 5 for the majority of the day once we kind of click off some laps and he can move his way towards the front. Starting in 14th, he does have some place differential mixed in, so when you're looking at guys like Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, William Byron, who I think all have very fast cars and have similar upside, you get to add on about 10 extra spots with Denny Hamlin for where he's starting. So over on FanDuel, that makes a ton of sense. Over on DraftKings, though, he is going to miss out on some potential early dominator points, so that's something to keep in mind. But these guys are all going to be very excellent plays, but Denny Hamlin might get the slight edge depending on your roster construction just because of the PD, but I think we could just group all 3 of these guys together. Not saying they're the same exact play, but I mean, these guys are just the absolute top dogs at these kind of tracks so far this year and just the way they've been running this season. And there's a reason that the 3 most highest owned or priced drivers on each site. So Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, I love all 3. I'm going to try to have a ton of exposure of all 3. And as you can see, if you're looking at the track history at Kansas and some of the very similar tracks this season, all their numbers do pop up quite a bit. So going to have a ton of these guys because they're going to bring a ton of speed. They do every single time. They were fast in practice. As you can see, Kyle Larson was first in the 15 and 20. Martin Truex was second in the 15 and 20, and then Denny Hamlin was top 5 as well. So I don't really think there'd be a good argument against playing these drivers. So I'm just going to have to try to be overweight on whatever their ownership is. And it's kind of easier to do because I feel like I'll end up being lower on William Byron and Christopher Bell. So it's not like I'm trying to jam in all 5 of these guys. I think the top 3 are definitely a leg above. And I will mention why with William Byron because you're probably wondering. well, William Byron's been amazing this year, and he's been amazing at high-speed intermediates, which is 100% true, and I'm not saying he's not playable, but at the same time, with his issue in practice, he's going to have to drop to the rear in this race. So you already lose all that track position, which is important, and at that point, he's going to be starting right there with Kyle Busch, and they pretty much end up becoming the same play, because Kyle Busch had some decent speed in practice as well. He was 10th in the 10 lap and 6th in the 15. I think William Byron's going to have a bit of a better car, but when I can get Kyle Busch starting in 35th and being scored from 35th rather than 9th, I think it just makes more sense to have exposure there. So I'll probably be a little bit low on William Byron, even though that wasn't my assumption heading into the weekend with how good he's been at similar tracks. And then we have Christopher Bell at $10,000. He's starting in first. I think he screwed almost everybody last week. He ended up being way higher owned than I thought, but I still had a very good chunk of exposure to see Bell, and had that bad pit stop at first, which go figure, they gave him a good, better pit crew, and it ends up still going bad. Then he hits the wall, which, funny enough, I mean, Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson hit the wall, and it makes them go faster. When Christopher Bell hits the wall, his car explodes, so that was unfortunate. Looking at practice, 19th, 17th, 12th, I don't think he's going to have a better car than Truex and Larson, so I think at some point he's going to get passed, and with only 267 laps, I just don't think it's the same scenario last week where there's more laps to be led. So personally for me, I think I'm going to be a little bit lower on Bell, not saying to have 0% of him or anything, but just to try to make more room for guys like Reddick, Kyle Busch, Larson, Truex, Hamlin. I just won't be able to get to too much Christopher Bell, unfortunately. And I do love all the Toyotas here. I mean, Toyota just runs this track, but gotta pick and choose your battles and can't play everybody. Like, I'd much rather play Tyler Reddick starting in 5th. He looks like he's got an extremely fast car, and we know how good the 45 car is at Kansas. It swept it the first year at Next Gen, and Tyler Reddick had a fast car at the beginning of the race earlier in the season as well. But he's $9,800. He's starting in 5th, first in the 1 lap, first in the 5, first in the 10. Hard to argue against it. I'm assuming he's going to be fast during this race. He'll probably stay within the top 5 outside of any issues, which we know Tyler Reddick is pretty prone to having issues. So I'm not saying it's a guarantee that it's going to go smoothly, but if he doesn't have any issues in this race, I would have a hard time seeing Reddick being a bad play. So he's definitely in the dominator pool. Kyle Busch, he's chalk. If you're playing cash games, just plug him in. He's starting in 35th. I understand being a little bit different in tournaments. If you want to get more exposure to guys like Tyler Reddick, William Byron, or whatever it may be in this price range, just to get a little bit different, but Busch is going to project extremely well, and he's very safe. And over on FanDuel, he's an easy plug-in play. Kevin Harvick at $9,500. He's starting in 20th. I really didn't plan on having any interest in the Fords, and he's very expensive on DK. Over on FanDuel, I think he's a better play over there. If you're looking at practice, top 13 across the board here, which does make me think he should be able to move up and finish around the top 10, which my pre-practice and qualifying model had him finishing in 10th place, right around 11.5 for the actual projected finish. So starting in 20th, it's not going to be as good, but he's more of a FanDuel play for me, because at $9,500, that's a bit much, but at 8K, we can make that work. Like, I'd much rather play Bubba Wallace on DraftKings, because he actually has some legit dominator upside here at Kansas with how good he's been here as well. But he comes in at 92 on DK, 10.5 over on FanDuel. He's starting in 10th, 3rd in the 1 lap, 3rd in the 5, 5th in the 10. The 2311 cars just tend to be very good here at Kansas, and I'm not really willing to bet against it. If you're looking at the numbers this year, and plus the Kansas races last year and this year, got a 6-race sample size of what I'm looking at. But Wallace, as you can see, the best average finish, one of the best running positions, has a win, and 4 top 5s, which I believe is the most of all drivers, tied up top with Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin. We also have some dominator points mixed in there as well. So this is definitely not a week to be against Bubba. Really, honestly, probably the best week ever to be on Bubba is at Kansas. Just tends to be a really good track for him. He got a win here last year. Ross Chastain, $9,000. He's starting in 6th. I feel like he probably out-qualified himself a little bit. If you're looking at practice, he was 14th in the 1 lap, 14th in the 5 lap. Kansas is a decent track for him. He did finish 5th last week, which was nice to see. Kind of got there based off of attrition and cautions, but he was still able to hold his own when he got up front. So he's a tournament play, but I'll be honest, I just have so much interest in Bubba here that I probably won't get to too much Ross. I will not be playing Joey Logano. If Logano's optimal, I'll just take the L there, but 26th and 20th in practice. I just don't see the Fords having top speed over the Toyotas and Chevy, so I'll be passing there. Chris Buescher, as hot as he has been, another good run last week. If you're looking at practice, 20th, 16th, 15th, qualified 13th. I think he'll probably finish around 15th to 10th. So there's just not too much appeal there. I'm not saying he's a complete fade, but I'm just not in love with it. Ryan Blaney, $8,500. He's starting in 17th. It's pretty tough choosing between some of these Fords. I mean, if you don't really have to play any of these guys, because if you're just kind of going stars and scrubsy a little bit, I mean, you can just kind of avoid this 8K range if you want. I just don't have a ton of interest in all the Fords here. Brad Keselowski, same exact play as Buescher, so whatever exposure you had with Buescher, I would probably say you'll have the same to Brad Keselowski. Chase Elliott, I like the price point on both sides. He's $8,100 on DK. Even cheaper than he was last week, I think, and only 9K on FanDuel. He's starting in fourth, so he has good track position. And Elliott actually has a pretty good history here at Kansas. I know some of the numbers and the sample size that we're looking at doesn't look too pretty, but overall intermediates, I think Chase Elliott will be fine. Speed-wise, it's been there for tracks like Kansas. And if you're looking at practice, 10th, 9th, and 7th, I think it's likely he loses spots, but if he can finish in the top 8, that's not bad at the price point, especially if he can steal a few fast laps. And he's got an outside chance of dominating. I believe it was this race early in the season where Chase Elliott did find his way up front for a few laps, ended up fading back. But at that price point, I think he at least had to take some shares in tournaments. Alex Bowman starting us off in the 7K range. He comes in starting 23rd, $7,800 on DK, 75 over on FanDuel. Looking at practice, wasn't super impressive. Pretty much qualified right where he practiced. I assume he'll be a little bit faster during the race, but it's going to be hard to get to a lot of Bowman when we have Ty Gibbs starting in 36th right there, and especially Chase Elliott at that price point. If you're looking at some similar tracks for Bowman, he's actually been pretty good. 12.2 average finish, 11.1 running position, 2 top 5s, and a few top 10s. So, I mean, even though he's not going to project as well as Ty Gibbs, I think you still have to get some Bowman exposure just because of it. And I know he wasn't super amazing last week. I believe it was last week in practice where he wasn't great, but even then during the race, he ran pretty well. And I was looking at similar tracks and tire combinations, looking at the green flag speed, but was pretty good. And he actually was pretty fast late in the run in that race. Unfortunately, he wanted to block Daniel Suarez like it was the Daytona 500 for some reason, and ended up killing both of the race. But I think Bowman's fine for GPPs. Ty Gibbs, super fast car. Love him at Kansas. I played him early in the season, was fast until he spun and destroyed his car. But starting in 36, even though it's a backup car, I don't care. I mean, as long as he doesn't wreck out, he'll probably be optimal. Daniel Suarez, $7,500. He's starting in 15th. Actually, this whole range right here, Bowman, Gibbs, Suarez, Stenhouse, all very good plays. Now, the tournament plays are going to be Suarez, Stenhouse. Bowman's kind of like a hybrid hybrid GPP play. Gibbs, obviously, the cash chalk. But Suarez and Stenhouse here both showed some decent speed in practice, especially Ricky, 7th, 5th, and 6th. So if you want to get a little bit of exposure to guys like Suarez and Stenhouse, I'm fine with that if you want to try to get off some of the Gibbs chalk. Not saying you can't play them together, but they will definitely be much lower owned. Michael McDowell, I can't play him starting in 7th. He'll be a fade for me. Eric Jones fired off pretty quick, 22nd in the 10 lap. Probably going to run pretty close to where he's starting. I don't see a ton of upside here. He might be able to pull out a top 15, maybe, but I think it's pretty likely he finishes anywhere from 15th to 20th in this race. Dropping down to the 6K range, we have Austin Dillon. Qualified a bit too high for me. I'm probably just going to have to pass there. I just don't see how he's going to have top-of-the-line speed. I know he was 8th in the 15, but I think only 12 guys are in that. 16th in the 10, 22nd in the 5, 29th in the 1. He's a very high likelihood candidate to fall back, in my opinion. Eric Almirola starting in 25th. Just all the Fords do not look too appealing this week. Kevin Harvick looks like the only one that I have had any interest in so far, I think. And I don't really see that changing much unless we maybe get a cheap pump play driver. Chase Briscoe, I will say, at least showed a little bit of speed. He's starting in 26, 16th in the 1, 12th in the 5, 11th in the 10. His green flag speed numbers at similar tracks this year have been atrocious. But if you're looking for a cheap play, at least he practiced a little bit better than where he qualified. Allmendinger in 22nd, pretty much on par with practice, although even worse than the 5 lap, don't have much interest there. Carson Hocevar, I think, can kind of hold ground. Talented driver. Maybe not the best equipment, but I think he's good enough to kind of hold around 20th place. Austin Cindric, practice wasn't pretty. 27th in the 1, 26th in the 5. Overall, this season has just been so bad for Austin Cindric, looking at the numbers. Now, a couple of these are from Kansas last year. We just have 4 top 15s at similar tracks looking at this. And if we're looking at the next-gen car in general for Austin Cindric, it's just 21.1 average finish, 18.7 running position. I feel like he could probably stay around close to where he starts, and at $6,200, that might not be the worst thing. But he has definitely not been a fun guy to trust this season. So again, Austin Cindric, if you're playing him, you're hoping he holds ground. But according to practice, it would indicate that he might fall back a little bit. Priest starting in 28th, probably not too interesting. Although I can't say this for every driver because we're going to have to play someone down here, so I don't want to rule him out yet. I'll have to look at the other 5K guys. But starting in 28th, I mean, he probably won't move back too much, if any. One lap was 24th in practice, so if he can just hang around the top 25, it's not going to kill you. Sheldon Creed, no thank you. He's in the BJ McLeod car. Dropping down to the 5K range, Justin Haley, $5,800, starting in 30th. Practice, not amazing. 32nd, 27th, 23rd. Starting in 30th, though. If you just need a cheap play, I don't mind it as a punt. Corey LaJoy was slow as well. Harrison Burton, extremely slow, 33rd and 34th. Gillen looks like he might be viable here. He's $5,200. He is a Ford, but I won't discriminate too much down here. He's starting in 32nd. And if you're looking at practice, he was 11th in the 1 lap, 24th in the 5, 18th in the 10. You could definitely do worse for $5,200. So I think Gilly's certainly in the player pool. Custer, I'll pass. JJ Yelly, no thank you. And just a bunch of slowness down here. So Gillen's definitely looking like the best punt option for now. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. I hope you did enjoy. And if you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Even if you didn't, I would appreciate a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I'll be more than happy to answer them down below. I wish you all the best of luck, whether it be NASCAR or NFL this week. And I'll see you all next time.